building the power to protect our lakes. And I wanted to thank everyone for coming. We've been going to lake association meetings all summer, and so many of the issues that I see lake after lake after lake contending with really could be solved with power. And, there's the misuse of power, which we're all familiar with. There's the use of power, which we're also familiar, and there's the non-use of power. And I'm going to make the case to you today that the use of political power, which is what we have in service of the common good, which is clean waters, healthy land, healthy lakes, healthy rivers, that is a public good. That is the appropriate use of power. And we shouldn't shy away from it. And then kind of a how-to and a little bit of case studies. So this is the Google Meet slide, I guess, for sending your questions. So I kind of wanted to talk about, this is our mission statement. And this map, I think, is key. This shows where the lake associations that are members of Minnesota Lakes and Rivers are located. So we're scattered across the state. But if I was to do this map in individual members, we have individual members in every legislative district in the state and in every state in the union. That's a really strong. I don't know why I'm flipping so quickly on my. It's clicking ahead. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties here. I will not use my mouse. I will use my. And then in terms of structure of MLR, I think a lot of you have noticed it, and all of this is about enhancing the power of lake associations, lakes, home, and cabin owners, and MLR to impact public policy in support of protecting our lakes and rivers. So there's the advocacy organization, that's the 501c4. That's membership. Contributions are not tax deductible. A few years ago, we created the Minnesota Lakes and Rivers Protection and Education. That's a fully tax deductible 501c3. So you can contribute from, IRA rollover accounts or foundations or qualified charitable distributions or a legacy gift. And we've gotten a few of those, which we're really excited about, kind of create that sustainability moving forward. MLR P&E really is about communication, education, awareness. And trying to get lake issues into the public discourse. And then there's the Minnesota Lakes and Rivers Political Action Committee. And that is completely separate from the first two. And it can make campaign contributions. It can endorse candidates. It can do independent expenditures. So we could write a letter in support of a candidate as long as it's not coordinated with them. So those are kind of the three legs of the stool, and they're all about protecting, getting the power to protect and restore lakes. Our solution strategy is science, education, and organizing. And moving people, you see this, we have these partnerships. So, maybe DNR and a lake association. Civic infrastructure is the relationship between those partnerships. Then we have a leader, and then there's an active citizen. And moving people with inside those systems so they begin to engage in ways that produce change, kind of long term. This was our legislative agenda when we started the session last year. This year, last session. Protect County AIS Prevention Aid Formula in 2027. That was brought up in 2025. MLR worked to create that in 2014 in response to the increasing number of lakes that were becoming infested with aquatic invasive species. And it's a $10 million fund that goes from the Department of Department of Revenue directly to the counties. It's not a pass through the DNR. And the counties have a great deal of flexibility in how they use this money. The charge of the fund is to use it to prevent the spread of aquatic invasive species. Different counties appropriate this money in different ways. Some of them have AIS committees, some of them have AIS coordinators, some of them they put it all out the door in grants, but there's been a disconnect. Lake association after lake association meeting I go to, and they'll talk about their budgets, and they'll say, oh, we got $5,000 from the county to hire inspectors. That's this money. And in 2025, Governor Walz, in his budget, facing a budget deficit, cut this funding in half. We think that's a really bad idea because it was working. In 2014, when this money came online and people started developing local AIS programs with the counties, the rate of new infestations in the state of Minnesota bent and has continued to decline every year since then. So it's working, right? This is one government expenditure that's actually saving money for the public over the long term. This is a public good. Last session, or 2026 legislative session, was not a budget year. So this will come up again in 2027. So our energy is really focused towards that. In 2025, we were able to convince, and I say we, meaning all of you and partner organizations that we are working with, to get the legislature to protect the money for 2 years, so 2025, 2026, and then it's slated to go to half in 2027. That can be reversed, and that's our goal for 2027. So a lot of what I'm talking about now is ramping up towards that. And I think as long as we're having the discussion about how effective this funding is, I think there's an opportunity to talk about how to improve it. And so that's an opportunity that we have. We were looking at property tax reform, destructive boating practices, ways to restore and protect sensitive natural shorelines, and then water pollution from mining and agriculture. Much of what was accomplished last year was what didn't happen. So there was a bill to reduce AIS inspector training requirements, and we were able to beat that back. There was a bill to extend the hours of operation for jet skis. We beat that back. Unfortunately, there was legislation for smart salt training for applicators. We were supporting that. It didn't pass. There was a neonic ban, and this is a class of pesticides that's used in agriculture that really can affect life in lakes, right? It's a neurotoxin, so it affects pollinators, it affects birds, it affects all the little insects and things that live in the lakes. And I think there's a more and more data showing that there's a reduction in the size and abundance of fish species, and part of it is lack of food, and part of that is there's fewer insects today than there were in the past. And neonics are they're designed to kill insects, and they work pretty well. Lead tackle ban, that did not move forward. And then a bill that prohibited operating a wake boat or a boat in a way that threatened wild rice, and that did not move forward. The legislation that was introduced in 2025 and 2026 will now sunset. So these bills will have to be reintroduced, and then we'll support them moving forward. The big thing that happened was excess school operating levels. If you own a cabin, you'll see this line on your bill, state general tax. It applies to cabin properties and commercial industrial properties. And it's about I'm trying to remember, Henry, is it like $48 million is what statewide is what cabins pay into this?
That's approximately between $48 and $52 million per
Okay.
year.
Yeah. And part of the deal is we would be put on these excess operating levies. The revenue from them, a portion of it would be returned to local communities to fund schools. Cabin properties were removed from having to pay excess school operating levies that appear as ballot measures. That was 2002. Tim Pawlenty was facing budget deficits. So the legislature, the year after the state general tax was created, the legislature grabbed the money. And now the schools have been shortchanged ever since. Senator Hochschild from up in the Ely area was able to get a bill through that moves some of this seasonal rec property taxes to local school districts. I think that'll be a really good move. If you live in one of these districts and you have a lake home, this will help reduce the property tax pressure on that lake home without impacting the cabin properties at all. I mean, they pay the same, it's just where the money goes. So that was kind of a big deal. Senator Hochschild is on the tax committee, and that's important to note what committees legislators are on. And this is the opportunity. We have an unprecedented historical opportunity. 64 legislators at this point, by the latest count, are retiring this year. As far as I can tell, and I've looked a little bit, this is, about double anything that's ever happened in the past. We've never had this many legislators retire. When they retire, they get replaced. The people that replace them, the men and women who take up these roles following this wave of retirements, will be in place, many of them, for a long time, decades. So it's a reset. So we have an opportunity to reset our issues. And that's a good thing, I think. The polls are showing, Minnesotans support our mission, whether or not they have a cabin or a lake home. That's positive. Our membership is politically diverse. We used one of these algorithms on our database. It's got about 50,000 contacts in it. And it came back 48% Democratic and 46% Republican, which pretty much reflects the demographics of Minnesota at large. So we are us, right? We are not an outlier. We are not a partisan group. We are split and reflect very much the population of Minnesota. And unlike other lobbyists down at the Capitol, we represent actual people that are working for the public good of clean water in their daily lives, right? This is central to who they are. They're lake people. That's different than, special interest groups. Key challenges. The first one is a biggie. We are not big enough. We do not have enough members to really impact. Every legislator meeting we have, they ask us, how many dues-paying members do you have? And we say we have 300 lake associations and 3,000 individual members. And that's not that impressive to them. 20,000, 30,000, 50,000. Those are the kinds of numbers that really get legislators to focus on what you're trying to tell them. And there's a strong, long-standing bias. And we've heard it in the tax committee. I've heard it at DNR roundtable meetings. I've heard it at different agencies, that lake associations are basically homeowners associations run amok. And their goal is just to shut the public off the public waters. And that's a problem. And it comes up again and again and again. I think it's false. So in the next year, really our communication strategy and the messages that we're putting out as lake associations should counter this narrative. And I think our narrative is heritage. You know, we have a legacy of time spent on a lake with friends and family in this state. And it's not just the people who own the property. I mean, our place is on Lake Vermilion, and I've had students of mine at Concordia College, among family and his uncles, they've used the place. Boy Scout troops have used it. Our plumber has used it. People open these places up to many different types of people. Lots of people rent, you know, they go and do a VRBO, or they are on the resort. And those are memories that are kind of central to every Minnesotan time at the lake. It's a big cultural benefit. And lake associations are working to make sure that these lakes and rivers are healthy into the future. And I think we can really lean into that and claim that space to push back against this narrative of Rich Cabanover trying to shut the public off the public waters. This is a generational opportunity to build political power for water. It's kind of unprecedented. And we have the capacity, we just need to do the work. So you know, what can you do? Which is kind of why you're here, I think, is to learn how to engage in this way. The more you can just tell people to join Minnesota Lakes and Rivers, at least for our Citizens Action Network, to get our email and our action alerts so that they can engage politically. There's a lot of really engaged lake associations that, you know, nobody from the board is a member. So if the board could join, and then the board can advocate to the members, we all joined, you should join, build this thing into the kind of advocacy organization that can have impact at scale. So that's a big piece. The other thing is now, while the campaign season is on, they'll be doing the primaries until, I believe it's mid to late August is when the primaries are, Henry. And then we'll know who the candidates are. But I don't want to discourage you from meeting with candidates between now and then. Because even the people who aren't elected, right, or don't make it to the primary, they probably will run again. And they probably are in rooms with people who are policymakers. And they are engaged and talking to a lot of people. And if they understand the importance of lakes and rivers and these communities to the state of Minnesota from a financial perspective, from a quality of life perspective, from a environmental perspective, those conversations will happen. Tell a good, positive story. You know, as well as I know, you sit down and somebody has got a bitch session. And you kind of, yeah, you need to tell them what the problems are, but maybe start with all the good work you're doing. And then talk about the gaps and share your challenges. And then try and close with this protecting the AIS prevention aid and why it's so critically important, not only to your lake association or you personally, but the entire state. We have a year-long media campaign. You may have seen some of these, public service announcements. They're going out one a month for the next 3 months, which is what we could afford. I'd like to get them. They're, June, July, August right now. I'd like to get September, October, November kind of into the election. And they're keyed toward messages about protecting AIS prevention aid and some of the benefits of it. They, in a partnership with Leighton Media, they're using IP addresses so they can take emails and connect IP addresses with them. So if you're a lake home and cabin owner in Minnesota, but let's say you live in California and you go online to watch Netflix and you get those commercials that pop up before your thing will play, this will be one of the ones that's in that cycle. So it's showing specifically to lakeshore property owners in Minnesota, even if they're not in Minnesota. It's pretty powerful, and the views, I think, over the course of the summer will be in the millions. And here's the last thing that is that I think is key. I speak at a lot of lake association meetings or attend them, and often they'll start with reading their mission statement, and it'll go something like, we're an organization of engaged, concerned citizens. We're a non-political organization of concerned citizens working to protect the waters of, Lake Vermilion or whatever lake. And to me, that's a contradiction in statement. If you're a group of concerned citizens, the work you're doing is political, right? It's nonpartisan, but it's political. Every lake association meeting where you've got different people coming together to talk about how to advance the public good of protecting lakes, that's political. Small p, but political and really important. And a lot of these local offices are apolitical, but critically important. And identifying candidates or running yourself, a lot of people, ask, how do we get young people involved? I think there's a lot of young people that have the capacity and the skills to run for public office and would do really well, especially if they had a couple of lake associations in the district supporting them. We have a couple of members who have taken up this, who understand the importance of this from a lake association perspective. When Henry and I were talking about this webinar, we looked at what are the models where the interest group or the advocacy group is really, really, really successful. And I would say that right now, the ag lobby is probably the most powerful lobbying organization in the state. But would you agree with that, Henry?
I think on a historical arc, yes. Yep.
Yeah. And how many farmers are there in the state?
Well, I don't want to give I don't have that number but it's around, I think, 30,000 family farms.
30,000.
There's other interests, of course, that make that
right,
and affiliated industries, of course, but yeah.
So to put that in perspective, right? There's 300,000 lake home and cabin owners in the state of Minnesota. There's over 100,000 people in the state of Minnesota that are a member of a lake association currently. That's more than Ducks Unlimited and Pheasants Forever combined, right? So we have the numbers if we can pull them together into a base. And then in terms of, why is ag so successful? They've run for office. You go to county commissioners, and a lot of county commissioners are farmers. There's a lot of farmers that are at the state capitol. They are on soil and water conservation district boards. They're on watershed district boards. They're on variance boards. They're running for city councils, for town councils, for kind of all of these public offices, and they're coordinated and delivering the same message and working to the same end. That kind of integrated advocacy with people engaged in the political process at different levels, coordinated, is really, really powerful. That's kind of what we're talking about here. I have Dan and Pat. One is a city council person. Do you want to click in, Dan and Pat?
Hello.
Hey, Dan Brennan. You are on the city council of Emily, Minnesota.
Emily, yes,
So, okay. And you're Lake Association president?
I am. Well, we're actually a lake improvement district. So we're actually, that arm of government below county. But yeah, so we get to tax, which is really great. Cool.
So what kind of motivated you to run for city council?
So, a few things. In addition, I'm going to add one other sort of hat that I and some others in our town wear, which is we're part of a mine information group. We've got a manganese deposit in our town that is now being explored with the idea that they will be at some point in the near future mined. So the information coming out was very one-sided, as you'd expect. There really wasn't a counterbalance to that. So I and several others from town got together and formed this group to get information out that wasn't tied to the economic interests of anybody at all, quite frankly, except to the extent that some of the information shows that what might happen at that mine would be a bad experience for the people in and around Emily. So it was kind of the kind of joining of those three things. We so as a lake improvement district, we are MLR members. My wife and I are MLR members. We also recently joined the board. We work with MLR. They've been great in helping us sort of figure out how we best advocate for the water that's at risk through these mining plans, etc. We've had the discussion, Jeff, like you just had, and directly with you about, the need to, it doesn't have to be big things, but it's the need to start to occupy the space where either small decisions, but later larger decisions, if that one step becomes another step in the political process in terms of what, moving maybe from a council to a county board or something like that. So we're really married on a couple of levels to this particular mission. It's I think the foresight of it is fantastic. And, the thing we run into as a lake improvement district is just what Jeff just described, which is we contribute as a improvement district. We have several members from around the lake that are individual members of MLR. And then, but it's this really untapped resource. And so in our last meeting, for instance, we really focused on just what this message is, which is how do we get out to our individual members and beyond just like putting another pitch in the letter or an email or something like that. We're trying to come up with maybe some door-to-door stuff that would bring us additional people to MLR, because MLR is like I said, we tax. Our money comes in not voluntarily, except that in the beginning we volunteered to be taxed for the lake, but we have money coming in through the taxes, and this is exactly what that should be recognized as going to, is we need to be able to figure out a way to strengthen those interests that support our mission. But specifically with regard to city council, it was all of these things. It was the council leaned probably in favor of mining as a general predisposition. The council begrudgingly, and I'm very grateful for it, but they take money out of the city budget and give it to the three the one lake improvement district and the two lake associations in our city. And so there's these critical funds, there are these discussions about, city identity and, the mind puts it all in really clear uh, focus, which is, what happens to this community if our water is spoiled? What happens? We're a completely tourist-based, recreation-based economy. What happens if, there are 400 trucks going up and down the road because this mine is in place? And those decisions get made by individuals with how they respond to the different levels of community involvement in the process going toward a mine, for instance, or whether to give money to lakes, whether that's a value that the city benefits from. That's a contribution from which the city benefits. And so it's just the idea, it's really stuck with the idea of, yeah, just one little change, for instance, on our council made a huge difference. We are now better poised. We're getting ordinances in place that directly respond to the risks that are coming our way with this mine. We have now someone, and actually we have two people on our council now that actually are lake property owners, and so that voice is becoming a little clearer there. And so it's just, it's not a big thing. It wasn't like some big revelational thing. It was just like, yeah, that makes sense. So it's a good first step. It's not a big first step. It doesn't take a terrible amount of time, but I think it does, really make a difference. Too long, but there it is.
Yeah, no, that's great, Dan. Thanks. And so was it hard? I mean, and MLR through the PAC can make contributions. So if someone on this call decides they want to run or join a board, I mean, another place where you can engage is, there's all these state boards, like the Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources, which puts out, I think over $100 million a year of the lottery proceeds for different projects, or the Clean Water Council, or all these different agencies have these boards, and you can run for one of those as well, which is really, really useful. Or there's like the Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species statewide AIS committee, and I served on that. Sammy is currently serving on it, but this is something that you can apply for and serve on and help steer resources and have these discussions and sort of shift the focus incrementally. But so Dan, was it hard? Did it take a lot of time to run for office? How'd you do it?
It really didn't. In fact, we had this long planned vacation right in the middle of the sort of campaigning thing. So, it was just putting in a simple statement of candidacy. And then I did something that, we've got 850 people in our city. And, I door knocked, which most people don't. They put up signs and stuff like that. So there was a larger time commitment, but I can't tell you how valuable that was, because a lot of presumptions that I had were really dispelled in that process. I thought there would be a very, just because of the political climate in that, and I'm, I've done several things around in Emily that, make me kind of a known commodity, but they also know that, politically, in terms of partisanship, if that became an issue, I don't meet the demographics. So it's, but it was very interesting. It went wonderfully, and people were genuinely, if you have the conversation with people, that's that other stuff, in my experience, goes away. And so it was it was probably, I probably spent 7 or 8 days for a half of the day going out and knocking on doors. And that was it. That I talked to some business owners. I spent some time with some, employees in town and things like that. But you can do all that kind of in the course of your normal goings on around town. So not really. I didn't do any heavy lifting.
Uh,
And let me just say this about the money, Jeff. It wasn't much. I think I bought, you know, $250 in lawn signs that I had permissions for to put out. And, I can't remember what the other, and then there was like some mailing stuff, some brochures, some other stuff that I handed out at the door. And that was easily covered by like 4 contributions that I got. So I really wasn't out of pocket at all.
that's wonderful. Pat Murphy,
Yeah.
are you on?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah. So Pat, for those of you who don't know, is president of Aiken County COLA, and is running for Aiken County Commissioner.
Correct.
And but this isn't your first rodeo. So do you want to kind of talk about like what got you involved and how it benefits, why this is important to you from the perspective of water, and then what it's like?
Okay.
Commissioner is a pretty big deal.
Okay. So, I will go back to the 90s where I was a lobbyist for the Machinists Union. And I learned a lot about politics in St. Paul and in Washington, D.C. through that. And that never left me too far. I've always been doing that. Right now I'm a township supervisor in Glen Township. And my current little politicking or lobbying is right now we have overweight trucks. And there's a big national push to expand the weights on trucks. And so I've gotten involved with that lobbying. I've got, in touch with Stauber, and I've got him in to back off. He's on that committee, and he's in fact is going to vote no. So far there's other things on it, so he's going at the safety aspect. And what I'm getting at is you network. You got to get these people in line. The other thing is that I'm an elected director for our Mille Lacs Energy Co-op. That also puts you front and center on a lot of different boards, committees. And we've been down the last couple of years to St. Paul lobbying for nuclear energy. You also get our Monday night at Mancini's with about 15, 20 senators and House reps, from different areas. So you got to get involved with that, get your name out there so you can pick up the phone at any time and call them, that type of thing. And I know one of the good ones this last time, Senator John Hoffman was there. And I came up, I introduced myself to him just after the meeting, and he was a great speaker. And I said, John, that we're probably the only 2 Democrats in this whole Mancini's. And he says, yeah, you and I should stop off and have a beer. He said this, a beer. And he's just a great guy as far as networking. And I said, nah, we'll make it out of here. If nothing else, I said, he comes about to below my shoulders anyway. I said, nothing else. We'll walk out of here together. And I said, I'm from St. Paul. I know the town. And anyway, he kind of got a laugh out of that, but I'm a DFL delegate. I saw him on the floor lately, and he remembered my name, and he said, do you feel a little better now, Pat, with all these Democrats around you? And I said, yeah, networking, is what you got to keep doing. One of the things that I am fortunate enough is that I spent many hours in front of our county commissioners last summer attempting to fight back on what they were doing with our shoreline ordinances. They were trying to weaken them. And I know between Bob Carls, myself, and many of our Lake Association reps, we were able to get that back. And thanks to you, Jeff, that sending out those emails just really turned the corner on that. When they found out what kind of numbers we could stir up at local emails that came through, I know one of the guys says, I don't know, I got over 100 now. I know how many more am I going to get? Can you stop it? I said, yeah, we can stop it. We just want to get the point across. So anyway, one of the things that does happen is that I've always gotten along with the county commissioners. you know, one of the things I do, Mike Kearney is the county commissioner in the Palisades, Hill City area. He's asked me for my help sometimes on Hill Lake, and I, you know, asked for his. He owns a restaurant in Palisades that we go to religiously every Wednesday morning, and there's different people that show up, but we get, and that's not even my district. That's way north of me. The other one too, it's Brett Sample. Brett was one of the bodyguards actually for Stauber, and when he was going out in his first campaign, and so they've been friends for quite a while, and they're a couple of devout Republicans, but they are the two guys that really convinced myself and my wife that I got to run. And the reason why is because my lobbying. You know, that type of thing. But I also will tell you that as far as getting involved with anything you can, I'm on the water planning board. It's got money. You know, what we do is we get input on what projects the Mississippi watershed should get into. I was on the AIS board. I now have 4 Aclara reps on there. That has the AIS has about a $250,000 a year in Aiken County budget. How that's spent is pretty important. I'm not crazy about how it's spent either on a lot of things, but if we're going to do cuts, I've already suggested a lot. That's why I overdid. And I said, look, I'll put 4 Aclara reps on that board if you pay them $50 a meeting. They're getting it. So they're paying them $50 just to be there. And and really, what I really know too is that the Aiken County Commissioners have a lot more power than you think on a lot of edges, and they needed someone like me to be on there also, and I couldn't let this guy Travis, who's a devout mega, that nice guy, but go out there and just get handed him the position. So I decided that, yes, I've got to do my duty. And my wife agreed. You have to get that, you know, part of it taken care of, that go ahead and do it. And I guess I've got a lot of support, I know, but this is a local. He's born and raised here at Aiken County. I'm not. And he's also incumbent. So the road is kind of tough, but if nothing else too, even when you're campaigning, you're making a name for yourself. You're getting yourself out there. And in reality, I might have had more power being president of Aiken County Lakes and Rivers and the other things I do than anything else, you know. So it's one of those things that it's not about the power, it's about doing things right and knowing that you know, Jeff, I can't say enough about Minnesota Lakes and Rivers, what organization you're putting together, how it stands by our lake associations. I know the first time I think we asked you to an Aclara meeting, I think there's probably 10 other lake associations up there that have had you speaking since then throughout the years. So you're well known yourself. It's a good group to throw in ties with. And what I learned from everything I've ever done, numbers matter. I say too that when I was last night, I was with at a fundraiser. Trina Swanson, she's running for Congress against Stauber. Marcia, and I don't know her last name, is running for House Rep in 10A. Tara, she's running for Senator against, I can't think of his name, Weber Weinstein or whatever it is. And then Jeff Larson, House Rep. They were all there last night. So they all know that I'm on Lakes and Rivers, and they were all asking questions about that more than my going on for the county commissioner. But when I said to Trina that we represent 3,500 lake association homeowners, cabin owners in Aiken County, it stopped her in her tracks. Didn't know that could be, you know, there was that big of an organization here. And it's like you, Jeff, not all of them belong to the association, but they're on the lake. And I said, that's not counting the 20,000 that are down on Mille Lacs. Mille Lacs is also a member of Aclara, but they're not an association. So I said, really, we get out to a lot of different areas, and I'm on the board for Mille Lacs. I'm on the board for Long Lake Conservation. I'm on different boards around, and I just got off the board that's called Aiken Growth. Aiken Growth Innovations is what it's called. And we help businesses grow. And this was one of the things that I chaired for a while, and I was going to stay on it until we got our apartment building built, and that's a 44 unit one, and it'll be opening up in September in downtown Aiken, right across from the hospital. So all those little things adds credibility to your campaign, that I don't only say it, we do it, like as far as the housing goes. Y'all get those other, campaigning up there, how important housing is. Well, what do they do to make it? They don't, let's get it going. So I think too that my background I had to do it, Jeff. I had to run, and thanks for the support that you're giving. Lots.
Yeah, and I think, and thank you, Pat, for kind of being the model. I think when I look at the Minnesota, where water quality continues to decline, and despite the 250 some odd million that the state spends on protecting water, and the $8 million a year that lake associations are spending protecting and improving water, and the millions of volunteer hours, and the water quality continues to decline. And we've spent years really looking at this problem. And I think one of the key aspects of the reason why is that no one's in charge, right? All water is siloed. It's like there's a Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and the DNR and Bowser and Ag has a role in water. And then all these little communities have impact on water and make decisions about water, lakes and rivers, and how they're managed. And that's a problem. And then I look at the Lake Association world, and why can't we, what is our barrier to kind of scaling up success and meeting this moment at scale? And the Lake Associations are all siloed. And so we're kind of trying to do the thing that we want government, I think it's, and so at this point in time, having people like yourself that are willing to plug into government at these different levels and in different ways, and Dan and others that are MLR members, is just so incredibly useful. So I'm grateful. Anything either one of you want to add? Henry, do you have anything to add?
No, I just think it's great that, people are taking up the torch and trying to do some good work amongst these different offices, and it's encouraging, and it gives us a lot of hope. So we're thankful for that.
Yeah.
Jeff, the other thing I got to say is that I know that you can't do it by yourself, and that's where, like I say, even last weekend, and I saw Sammy out at the Long Lake, or the Aiken County Rivers and Lakes Fair. And I never did so much talking in my life as what I did out there at that fair. And you have so many things to say, and so little time to do it, but that's where you need help. You need to give the message, and I think you said it too, and get 5 people to say it to, and they'll get 5 people to say it to also, but that we got to keep out there helping our lakes and leave the legacy of a clean lake. And oh, by the way, I have to go on a fine line on all this, but I am meeting myself and Bob Carls, and he's got people with him coming, but we're meeting with Jessica Johnson next week out at Talon Metals. And, if we can continue, and she thought it was good too, the things that we started, just about, making sure they get it right. We're concerned about the water situation. And also, Bob mentioned the thing too on her that if we tested the water at a couple mile radius or 1 mile radius or whatever, it would really help ease everybody's fears, on a lot of things. So we're still working on that, trying to, and as the county commissioner, I got to walk that fine line. So that's it. Thanks.
And then to people on this call or others that you talk to, or if you're watching the video at a later date, really, I think it just starts from saying, are you have any interest? Do you have the time and interest to engage at this level? If not, you're talking to people. Have you identified anybody? Or if somebody's already declared themselves a candidate, meet with them and have a one-on-one. And one of the key questions to ask them is, what are they interested in? Are they interested in water, or are they just interested in business? If they're interested in business, do they understand the relationship between healthy lakes and strong businesses? Do they understand the relationship between healthy lakes and a stable property tax base? And if you find somebody who's really interested in water, let us know. Henry or I know, because we can start working on the background to develop those relationships should they win. But if you're meeting with someone and let's say they're running for the state legislature, a really good question to ask them is, what committees are they interested in serving on? And the two that are most useful for us are the tax committee, which will decide the fate of the county AIS prevention aid, and the environment committee, which does a lot of work on, LCCMR and the Clean Water Council, and a lot of funding streams, and the rules, the laws that govern the DNR and what they can or can't do. So if it's one of those two, make sure and let us know. And connect with us after you have your one-on-one so we can follow up with them and stay in the mix. Then there's the campaign finance refund program. And this is a program that's unique to Minnesota, I think. Henry, can you talk a little bit about how to use this program?
Sure. It's kind of an underutilized program, and what it does, it allows an individual Minnesota taxpayer, you have to be a resident of Minnesota, up to $75 for an individual or $150 for a couple per year to statewide candidates. So legislature, so House of Representatives, Senate, gubernatorial campaigns, and the rest. Unfortunately, Pat and Dan, that this program does not apply to the offices that you are either in or attempting to hold. But it's a great tool, and it really kind of just generates some recognition for these candidates. And it doesn't cost the people who pony up the money any money, because you fill out a form, you get a receipt from the candidate, you fill out a form at Department of Revenue, and then they'll send you a rebate check. So that's kind of how that works. And so it's really basically a short-term loan until the government kicks back to you, but it demonstrates what kind of enthusiasm and support there is in a local community for a local candidate. These are called small dollar contributions.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but there's limits on what a candidate can accept from a political action committee like the MLR PAC.
Yes, there are lids on large funds from a political action committee, but an individual member, I don't think there's any limits on how much individual donor money they can take from individuals.
Right. And the caucuses, the Republican Party or the Democratic Party in Minnesota, sets targets for their candidates in terms of money that they have to raise for the party. This funding here, I think, is outside of that requirement, right? Like, so these contributions are money that can actually go to the campaign and doesn't necessarily have to go to the party. Am I describing that well?
Yeah, for the most part, Jeff. Yeah, without getting into the weeds on stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's complex, but it's really, I know that legislators are very, very grateful for this funding stream, and it demonstrates commitment. And so after the August primaries, once we've identified a few key races of people that are interested in being on the committees where we do a lot of our work, I will be reaching back out to you to maybe host some fundraisers. And if we could get people in the room, talk about water, specifically the AIS prevention aid, and then hear from the candidate what their thinking is, and then urge people to make a contribution. I think that would be very, very powerful in building the relationships now that we're going to need when the legislative session starts in January 2027. And all of this effort, right, is keyed toward a Aquatic Invaders Summit 2027. We did one in 2014 because this county AIS prevention aid was going out and nobody knew what to do with it. Nobody knew what a AIS program looked like. So we had the 2014 Aquatic Invaders Summit. We did it in 15 to kind of follow up. We did it in 2018. And then we haven't done one since then, basically because we lack the capacity. It was just an enormous lift. It was just Judy and I at the time planning a statewide conference that had 450 people at it. But we're going again. Sammy and Lily and Peyton and Tim, we've got a team now. The dates are March 9th and 10th. So and that's midweek. We'll go all day on the 9th, start at breakfast time, and have content and programs and workshops and seminars the first night, and then we'll adjourn on the second day at noon and have buses that attendees can take to the state capitol, and from 1 to 3 we'll have a rally in the rotunda. And what will be happening at the legislature then is that will be when they're finalizing the tax bill, or starting to look at finalizing the tax bill. All the other committees go first. So the Environment Committee, they're spending money. They're spending money on different programs or new rules. They all have a fiscal note attached to them. Judiciary, Ag, Health and Human Services, they're spending money. Once they have their targets, once they say, okay, this is how much this legislative package is going to cost, then it goes to the tax committee, and the tax committee either cuts or raises the funding. So they'll be putting together the tax bill for 2027, starting about March, April, May. And we just wanted to be really visible at the legislature when the time is right for them to be starting to think seriously about what's going to be in that final bill. So that's kind of what this year-long push will culminate with. Let's see. Next slide, if I can get there. And here's, if you want, it's just mnlakesandrivers.com/join. We'll get you to our join page for any of the 3 organizations, the PAC, the advocacy group, or the Protection and Education. And thank you.